Okay, so just a little warning. Tonight's going to be unusual, okay? Because first of all, this mishnah is really difficult. Secondly, I guess part of what it's intrinsically difficult. Secondly, we don't have much help from the meforshim. Third, we are going to need to unify three different sources, and I think the best description of what we're gonna of the mishnah tonight is it's puzzling, but puzzling in the sense that it's going to feel like working out a puzzle. Okay, so I'm not even going to promise you that we're going to get ideas. At the very least, we will get a good review of some ideas we've already discussed, and we'll get a really like Rubik's Cube type problem to work on. Okay, and then we'll get whatever we get out of it. Okay, and despite what I said last time about like not writing out all the translations, I did this time just because I was afraid that the facts would be too overwhelming, and so I wanted to have everything available in English, just in case for easy reference. So with all those disclaimers, here we go. Okay, so we are up to the next mishnah in Pirkei Avos, which is in our numbering Gimel Zion. Okay, but again, it's different numbering in different systems. So this is going to sound familiar, okay? And it goes something like this. Rabbi Chalafta, make this a little bit different size. Rabbi Chalafta ben Dosa, Ish Kfar Hananya Omer. So Rabbi Chalafta, son of Dosa, man of Kfar Hananya, says, Asara Shiyoshvin ve'osikin b'Torah, 10 people who sit and, I don't know how to translate osik b'Torah. I know we say it every day, but delve into Torah, involve themselves in Torah, occupy themselves in Torah, busy themselves with Torah, however you want to say it. I said delve into Torah. Shechinah shruya beinehem. The Shechinah rests or will dwell among them. Okay. Shenemar, as it says in Tehillim, this is the shiur shel Yom of Tuesday. Elokim nitzav ba'adas kel. God stands in the assembly of God. It's a little bit of a weird phrase in English, but in Hebrew it's two different names. Elokim nitzav ba'adas kel. Okay. Uminayin afilu chamisha. How do you know that even 5? Okay, meaning how do you know that 5 people who sit and are involved in Torah, that the Shechinah is with them? Shneamar va'agudaso al eretz yasada. It says his group he founded upon the earth. Okay, God's group he founded upon the earth, or his bundle. Let's say bundle. It's hard to translate aguda. He founded upon the earth. Uminayin afilu shlosha. How do you know that even 3 people who sit and delve into Torah, that God is with them? Shneimar, as it says, and now this is also confusing. Bekerev, I'm pretty sure this is Bekerev Elohim Tishpot. In the midst of Elohim, which is another word for judges, Yishpot, God will judge. Okay, so God will judge in the midst of judges. Uminayin afilu shtayim. How do you know even 2, that 2 who sit and involve themselves in Torah, then the Shechinah will dwell with them? Shneimar, as it says, Az nidbru yirei Hashem ish al re'ehu v'yakshav Hashem v'yishma, etc. Then those who fear Hashem, it doesn't quote the whole pasuk, but then those who fear Hashem spoke each one to the other, and Hashem listened attentively and heard, and a book of remembrance was written before him for those who fear Hashem and those who think about his name. Uminayin afilu echad. How do you know that even one person who sits and delves into Torah, that the Shechinah dwells with him? Oh, now we're getting the sirens outside. I don't see flames leaping out of the building, so we'll see what happens. If I have to evacuate, we'll pause. Shneimar, as it says, B'chol hamakom asher azkir Hashemi avo elecha v'erachticha. So in every place that I will mention my name, I will come to you and I will bless you. Okay, so first question, before we even do questions, does this sound familiar to anyone? And if so, what is it about it that sounds familiar?
Yeah, I was just looking at these now. So there's the one with the 2 people sit together and there's words of Torah, then the Shechinah is with them.
Yeah.
And then maybe the one about like eating at a table is also related to that. I don't remember though.
Okay, so you're close. You're close. Oh, sorry. When you said that first thing, did you mean that that it's familiar to you because we saw it before?
What do you mean?
When you said the 2 people, you said that was familiar to
Wasn't
you.
that the previous mishnah that we did?
Okay, yeah. So it wasn't the
Okay.
previous mishnah. It was like 4 mishnayos ago. Okay, but
Well,
you're
right, one of
correct.
the
Okay,
previous.
yeah, you're correct. It was one of the previous ones. So this sounds familiar because this is almost verbatim. Okay, it quotes the same pasuk, and it's 2 who are learning Torah. The Shechinah is with them. Okay, so hold on to that thought. Let's just do our usual and ask the questions here. So what questions do you have? And it's going to seem like there's a lot, but I think in the interest of what do you call because there's going to be a lot of facts tonight, then let's try to keep it to major questions, and I'll try to be conservative in like lump the questions as few numbers as possible. Yeah, Alex?
The biggest question would be what's the use of having this kind of repeated again if it's basically verbatim.
Okay, so one question is, well, okay, so that's really a question on the clause about two. Okay, so why, I guess, what do we get from this near verbatim repetition of the clause about two people? Okay, yeah. Tamar?
I guess what's the idea of these different numbers of people, and why is each one being proved from a pasuk?
Okay, so that is definitely a major question. So what is the idea of all these numbers? What's the concept? Well, yeah, what I guess was the idea of all these numbers of people delving into Torah, and what role do the psukim play? Yeah, Rivki?
No, I was just gonna ask also about the psukim and how do they go with the explanations of each one.
Okay, good. Yeah. So so you know what? Let's split this into two questions here, okay? And the Shechinah being with them. Okay, then what role do the psukim play? And how does each pasuk support the claim being made? Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if this is a good question or not, but I feel like sometimes the order of the mishnah is important to commentators.
Yes.
So why wasn't this group with the other one that
Okay, good. Excellent question. Okay,
related?
good. So yeah, I've been wondering that also, and I haven't found an answer to that, but I saw the Rביno tries to answer that, but I didn't get a chance to see his answer because he's so long. So being that let me clarify this. From Avos Gimel. Okay, so being that this does seem so similar to Avos Gimel, Avos Gimel, why not juxtapose them? Yeah, good question. Yeah, Tamar?
I wasn't here for when you guys learned that other one,
okay.
but
Good, fresh idea, fresh eyes. Okay.
All right, so but I wanted to ask the question based on not knowing it. What does it mean that Shechinah dwells among people?
Okay, good. So that's going to be the major question here. Okay, and I was going to review that anyway, so you're in luck. Okay, so what does it mean? What does Shechinah mean in this context? Let's say that. What does Shechinah mean in this context? And what does it mean to dwell with people? Yeah. Okay. I feel like, I think there's one more question, at least major-ish question. Yeah.
I guess what does Oskim B'Torah mean exactly?
Okay, that's a good question also. Yeah, that is another major question. So what does Oskim B'Torah mean? And what are the parameters? Yeah. Lauren?
This is a little bit similar to Tamar's first question, but
Yeah.
I guess I'm kind of struck with the numbers. Why do they even need to do 10, 5,
Okay.
3, 2, 1?
Okay.
You could just have 2 and 1. Or,
Okay, that's the question. Okay, that was the
Yeah.
question I was looking for. Okay, so let's just say, okay, why do you even need all these numbers? Okay, why not just prove one and then kal v'chomer? Okay, and then you could tack onto this. Moreover, why these numbers? Okay, meaning 10, 5, 3, 2, 1, right? For example, what about 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 plus, right? I mean, there's a lot more numbers, right? So like, why single these out? Okay. I think those are the major questions. Now, again, this is gonna be an unusual night. We're gonna do this in a different way than we usually do. What I want to do now is start off by answering this question, okay? And the reason why I want to start with this is because usually when I go into the meforshim, usually we find so I prepared this with Isaiah, and usually we find multiple meforshim with multiple approaches and ideas, and I kind of have to select which ones to do here. This time we found the exact opposite. We found that almost nobody was helpful, okay? At least in the meforshim we have, we did this on Shabbos. So the meforshim we had, almost no one explained anything. The only thing they commented on is this question, okay? So it's almost like they weren't even concerned about the ideas. And so I want to kind of like, and that's part of what's going to make tonight difficult. So I kind of want to get that out of the way. And you would think, okay, I don't know if this is a trick question. Knowing me, what approach do you think I would take for trying to understand the psukim, just based on other shiurim that you've heard?
Go to the source.
Go to the source, okay, right? So this might shock you, but I actually think that the sources have nothing to do with this in this case, okay? And I don't really know enough about midrash to know this, but I have an intuition that in certain cases, there's certain types of drashos where they're not bringing the pasuk as a source for an idea, they're bringing it as an allusion just to a literary association. Okay, I'll give you an example of it. The only example I can think of offhand is a weird one. It's in the Haggadah. So hold on here. Wait, where do I find a Haggadah? Haggadah. Okay, I know it's a little bit early to do the Haggadah, but it's in the Drushos. Oh wait, do they have a Haggadah text? Yeah, okay, so this is going to be in Magid. Okay, so when we're darshaning the psukim and it says uvizro natuya with an outstretched arm, zo hacherev, this is the sword. Kamash nemar, as it says, v'charbo shlufa biado natuya al Yerushalayim. Okay, now that pasuk is hold on, is a pasuk in. Okay, hold on a second. Shlufa. Shlufa biado. Yeah, that is a phrase in Divrei Hayamim, okay, which it says, "Vayisa David es einav yar es malach Hashem omid ben haaretz u'ben hashmayim v'charbo shlufa biado natuya al Yerushalayim v'yipol David v'hazkinim mechusim basakim al pneim." So David lifted his eyes and saw the angel of Hashem standing between the heaven and the earth. Sorry, between the earth and the heavens, and his sword was outstretched in his hand. Or it was like unsheathed in his hand, stretched over to Yerushalayim, and David and the Zakenim covered their fell and covered their faces. Sorry, David fell and the Zakenim covered themselves in sackcloth over their faces. Okay, so the question in the Haggadah, I don't know if you've ever had this question in the Haggadah, is like, what does David and seeing an angel with a sword have to do with the story here? Like, it's telling the story about about the Makos, right? Like, we just got through Yad Chazakah Zoha Dever, so like, what is this doing here? And then, the temptation is to go into that story of David and like look for all of the connections between the two things. But from what I recall, from when I went through the story, the only reason the pasuk is broad is to show a drasha association between the word netuya and sword. And you see from here, it says sword netuya. So it's only bringing a linguistic support for it. Similarly here, I mean, this is a little bit different, but yad chazaka zoha dever, kamash nemar hine yad Hashem hoya b'miknecha asher basadeh, etc. So there, the pasuk does have to do with it, but it's showing an association between the word yad and dever, because it says yad chazaka. So it's the I don't know what to call these drushos, but these are not drushos. I mean, allusions is the best thing I can have here. Usually it's deriving an idea. Like, let's say when we went to the idea about the Moshav Leitzim, that if you sit without words of Torah in between, two people sit without words of Torah in between them, then it's like a Moshav Leitzim. There, the whole idea came from the Psukim and Tehillim. Here, it's just like a linguistic thing. Okay, so I'm going to walk you through that now, and we're treating this still as more facts. Okay, so Rבינו Yona, I mean, there's a lot of meforshim fill this in, but Rבינו Yona does it in the fewest words here. Okay, so he says, how do you know that 10? So it's from the pasuk, God stands in the assembly of God. So Elokim nitzav ba'adas kel ve'ein eda pachos me'asara. There's no assembly fewer than 10. Okay. Does anyone know what halacha that is related to? I mean, you could probably guess if it has to do with 10. Anyone know the halachic drasha? This is the source for minyan, by the way. How do we know that a minyan requires 10? So it there is a actually I bet one of the meforshim quotes it. Hold on, let's just go to Vadim Bartanura because he's usually the one who's most prone to quoting things like that. Yeah. In Eda Perusa Me'asara, Shnemar, as it says by Meraglim, it says by the Meraglim, Ad Masai La'eda Hara'azos Yatsu Ad Masai La'eda Hara'azos. What's the full pasuk? Until when where is it? Whatever. It's talking about the Meraglim, okay, and refers to the Meraglim as an Eda, and then it says Yatsu Yehoshua v'Kalev Harayasar. So there are 12 Meraglim, and he's talking about the bad Eda, so that excludes Yehoshua and Kalev, and you're left with 10. Okay, so that's the only reason it's bringing this in, because it has to do with it shows you that there's 10, and it says God stands with 10. Okay, then it says, how do you know 5? So Rבינו Yona says Hayad Nikres Aguda. So the hand, and I think specifically it's the fist, is sometimes called Aguda, and there are 5 fingers. Okay, nothing to do with this pasuk in Amos, according to Rבינו Yona. Okay, this pasuk in Amos. In fact, if you look at the pasuk in Amos, it's talking about like the elements and the earth. Okay, it's like it doesn't have anything with the hand. All right, okay, that's a halacha that there's no based in fewer than 3. Okay, then 2 is in the pasuk. We saw that last time. 2 is from the pasuk itself. Nidbru Yureshem Ish El Re'ehu. Each man spoke to his fellow. Okay, so that's 2. Okay, and then 1, Rבינו Yona doesn't answer, but there's a Rashi on the Gemara, which we're going to look at later on, that says from the pasuk. Any place where I permit my name to be mentioned, I will come to you, singular, and bless you. It doesn't say avo alechem uverachtem. It says lecha, so even one person. Okay, so that answers this question of so the psukim are just like alluding to these ideas, but presumably these ideas stand based on the phenomena themselves, not based on the psukim. Okay, and we don't really need to go into the psukim to answer the question. Okay, any questions on that so far? We're still in fact gathering mode. We're not answering questions yet. Okay, next step, okay, is to oops, I did this out of order. Okay, there's a Gemara in Berachos that is very similar to this but different. Okay, so here's the Gemara in Berachos. Uminayin la'asar shemispalin shechina imahen. How do you know that when 10 are davening, then the Shechinah is with them? Shnemar, and then quotes the same pasuk. Okay, so obviously the difference here is this is 10 who are davening. Okay, then it skips 5 and says Uminayin lishlosha shiyoshvim bedin shechina imahen. How do you know that with that 3 who sit in judgment? Okay, not 3 who are involved in Torah. 3 who sit in judgment, Shechinah imahen, and then quotes the same pasuk. Now it says verbatim what our mishnah says. How do you know that 2 who sit and delve into Torah, that the Shechinah is with them? Brings our pasuk. Okay, then there's a part of the Gemara I'm skipping because it's not related. And then quotes our pasuk. So the first 2 are different because it says 10 not for Torah but for tefillah, and then 3 it says for din, not for Torah, and then it omits 5. But then the last 2 are the same. But then the Gemara is, I totally went out of order. Okay, I totally forgot the last part of the Rבינו Yona, but we're not going to stop now. Okay, we're going to go on. We'll go back to Rבינו Yona. So then the Gemara asks obvious questions. So it asks what Lauren said. Once you know 1, do you really need to prove 2? So the answer is tre mikasvan milaihu b'sefer hazichronos. 2, their words are written in the book of remembrance. Chad lo mikasvan milei b'sefer hazichronos. Okay, but 1, his words are not written. Okay, so that's getting it from the pasuk. Okay, which is kind of going against what I just said, because I said the pasukim don't really matter. But the Gemara says that 2 people get their words written, but 1 person does not get his words written. Okay, then the Gemara says, once you know 2, then you really need 3. Mahu detema, what might you say? So here's the Havamina. Havamina is Dina Shlama Ba'almahu, that when they're engaged in justice or in judgment, that judgment is just promoting peace in the world, okay? And therefore the Shechinah would not be with them. Kamash Malan, and therefore we have to learn the Dina Nami Hainu Torah, that judgment is also Torah. Okay, so in other words, you have three judges sitting on a beis din, and yeah, they're applying Torah laws, but you might say that since they're only applying Torah laws, they're not really learning Torah, and they're just using the Torah laws to bring peace into the world. So then the Shechinah is not with them. So that's why it needs to teach you, no, even when 3 are sitting in judgment, then 3 in judgment counts as 3 being involved in Torah. Okay, then once you have 3, then do you really need 10? So the answer is a funny one. Asara kadma Shechinah va'asya. With 10, the Shechinah preemptively arrives. The Shechinah is there before all 10 have convened. Okay, in fact, let me show you the Rashi that I referred to earlier in Berachos daf vav amud aleph. Oops. I think it's at the very end. So before all 10 get there, the Shechinah is already there. Okay, but with 3, but with 3, it only arrives once they convene. Okay, so now this other question is, so now not only do we have a semi-redundancy with the other mishnah in Pirkei Avos, which we're going to review in a second, but we also have the semi-redundancy with the Gemara, but it creates more problems because it doesn't mention 5, it mentions 10, but for tefillah, it mentions 3, but for judgment, and then we have all these havaminas. Okay, back to Rבינו Yona. Okay, any questions on just the shot of the Gemara here? Yeah, Tamar?
Yeah, I'm not.
Oh, go ahead. I'll ask a question after.
I'm just not understanding their havaminas that they said for 3 to 2. I don't know if you, or maybe that's part of the question. I don't know. On the Gemara. Yeah, I guess could you just maybe review the basic facts of the havaminas? Or
so it's saying so you'll go from the top. So once you have 1, why do you need 2? So the difference is to teach you that 1 does not get his words written in the book of remembrance, but 2 do. Now, once you have 2, why do you need 3? So it's really an idea about 3, is that with 3, you might say, since these judges are only getting together to implement the words of Torah to make peace in the world, somehow that is not considered to be worthy of the Shechinah with them. Okay. And then the answer is no, since they still are involved in Torah when they're applying their din, and Torah has Shechinah, then the Shechinah is with them also. And then once you have 3, why do you need 10? So because 3, the Shechinah only arrives once they convene together, but with 10, even before they get there, then the Shechinah is there on the spot.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, Tamar?
This is saying, kind of, without trying to define it too much, when it's giving more than one number, even though it seems like you could learn from the other, it's teaching you some sort of difference.
It's teaching you a chiddush, yeah. So the Gemara is approaching it that each one's teaching you a chiddush, okay? But now let's go back to the Rבינו Yona, I forgot, who gives a simpler answer.
Wait, can I ask another question on this?
Yeah.
And this might be not a question to address right now. Is the Gemara saying that if you had 2, and I guess you just don't have 2 people on a beis din, but like, is that what it is? Okay, because I was like, it just seems like is 3 a factor in this thing, or is just telling you something about beis din?
3 is the minimal number for beis din.
Right. Okay, that's like a practical thing. It's not that like you need 3 people to make up for the fact that it's only judgment and not something else. Okay. Yeah.
Fair question. Yeah. By the way, again, I'm gonna keep on repeating this throughout the thing. This is a really difficult night tonight, and like it's hard to even tell which questions are good questions. Okay. And so that's why just ask away. Yeah, Alex.
I also don't know if this is necessarily the most applicable question now to answer, but when it's saying that the Shechinah is preemptively there for 10 people, does that mean like on some level it's like a predestination thing where there's like no free will? It's like if it's already there, there's the implication that the 10 will show up. What if?
So I don't think you even have to go into that. It's so you are asking a question, which is an interesting question, which is what happens if they're waiting for 10 and the 10 don't show up? Okay, so plain shot of the Gemara is then the Shechinah wouldn't be there. Okay, but the Shechinah knows when there's gonna be 10, right? Like, I mean, God does know the future, right? So without getting into like predestination, free will stuff like that, if there are going to be 10, then the Shechinah was there ahead of time. Okay, that's what we'll take it for that for now. Okay, yeah, Ayala.
Did you say, is there a reason why the 1 and the 2 don't have a havamina of like? If you said that, then why 10 or whatever?
So 1 has havamina, which is that you might think that the havamina is that you need 2 people for the Shechinah. Okay, and where do we get that havamina from? From that other mishnah we did that says when 2 people are involved in Torah together, then Shechinah is with them. Okay, and it's interesting because that mishnah, we're going to review it in a little while. It says with 1, I don't know, do anyone remember what it said by 1? It doesn't say the Shechinah is with him. All right, we'll see it. It says that he gets reward. Okay, so it is a chiddush that the Shechinah can be with even 1 person. Okay, with 2, it's a good question. I don't know what the. I mean, the chiddush sounds like it's just trying to bring out this chiddush that their words are written in a book of remembrance, but it doesn't seem to be surprised that the Shechinah is with them. Right? Is that what you're asking about? Like, why? Is there? Yeah. I guess the chiddush came from the other mishnah. Okay. Yeah, we'll review the other mishnah momentarily. I just want to show you this one Rבינו Yona, which I missed. He says, "V'ima filo echad yesh lo sachar harbe halo pashudhu ki im la'asara ad shnaim yitnu lahem sachar." So he says, if even 1 person gets a lot of reward, then isn't it obvious that from 10 to 2, then they're going to get reward? Ella ratzalam or litain lechol echad sachar lefi shehim rabim. So the answer means to say that each one is given reward because they are many. Now, I understand that to mean different than what the Gemara is saying, which is that this is to teach you that it's proportional, that the more people there are, then the more Shechinah, the better the Shechinah is, or the more reward there is. Okay, but that's how Rבינו Yona says it. Why doesn't he quote the Gemara? It's a good question. Again, this is part of like again, when Isaiah and I went into the meforshim on this, it was like they all just weren't interested in anything other than explaining how you get the numbers from the psukim. Okay, and like we were just like stuck with like, okay, like, well, what's the idea? Yeah, Tamar.
Just another maybe problem with this is like, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I feel like from my own personal experience, if you try and let's say actually learn one thing in a group of 10 people, it's not ideal necessarily.
Right.
Right. And I don't know if that's what it's saying.
Maximum size for a chabura, right? Yeah. And everyone has their own limits. For me, it's 4. If there are 4 people, I can learn. But once there are 5, then it's just like too many. Yeah. Yeah.
I guess, I mean, it is maybe just a question on what the case is, but like, what is the idea of having 10 people learn and what is happening in that case?
So I think you have to say that, again, when I said 5 is too many, that's like 5 people all having a chabura together. Okay. I think when you have 10, it has to be like a shiur or something like that, right? It has to be like one person who's like taking a leadership role, because you can't have 10 people all like talking about the ideas. The other possibility, by the way, which is interesting, it doesn't actually say that they're learning together. Okay, and I think we should keep that in mind, that maybe you have a base midrash with 5 chavrusas, right? Or 10 individual people learning by themselves. That might also qualify. Okay. Yeah, we can add that to what are the parameters? Are they even learning together? Are they even learning together? Yeah. Okay. Next step is let's review the other mishnah that we did 5 weeks ago. Okay. That will fill in all the facts from Chazal, and then we have to go to the one helper that we have. Okay, so here's the review. Okay, Rabbi Chanina ben Tradion Omer. Chanina ben Tradion says, Shnaim Shioshim ve'ein b'neihem divrei Torah. Two people who are sitting and there are no words of Torah between them. Harizeh Moshav Leitim. This is a session of here. We all the meforshim said that it's not Leitim. It's not scorners, scoffers, mockers. In this case, it is people who are wasting their lives. Okay, that's how all the meforshim translated it there. As it is stated, he does not sit in a moshav leitim, and then all the meforshim quoted the pasuk after this, which says Ki'im b'Torah Hashem chafetzo uv'sora so yehege yomam v'layla. But he's only involved in the Torah of Hashem, and in his Torah is his delight day and night. Or sorry, in his Torah he thinks day and night. Okay, so that shows you that there's like two options: either you're sitting in a moshav leitim, or you're involved in Torah. So if there's no Torah in between you, then by default you're in a moshav leitim. That's like the limud. Okay, but then it says Aval shnayim sheyoshin v'yesh b'neihem divrei Torah, but two who sit and there are words of Torah between them. Shechinah shruya b'neihem. Hold on, just 1 second. Just 1 second. Possibly. Hold on. Possibly big here. Sforno's idea might be contingent on something that Shechinah. Okay. Oh yeah, no, it works out. Shechinah shruya b'neihem, I think. Okay. Yeah, the Shechinah dwells among them. Okay, fine. Yeah. Okay. So then it says, as it stated, then quotes our pasuk. Okay. So did anyone catch the difference? There are two differences between the case of two here and the case in our mishnah. I can go back.
Is it like asuk? Yeah. Is it asuk versus
yes? Okay, good.
Okay,
okay, so this one says two who sit ve'ein b'neihem divrei Torah and yesh b'neihem divrei Torah. Okay, but in our mishnah it says it used the word oskim b'Torah. Okay, that they're delving into Torah. All right, so that's one difference. All right, and then the other difference is, I think, hold on just 1 second. This is the thing I was curious about. No, never mind. Okay, fine. So it's just one difference. Okay, that's it. Yeah. Okay. So let's now review the Sforno idea from last time. Okay. Or let's not review the idea. Let's review the commentary, and then we're gonna do the Sforno on our commentary, and then we'll have all the facts. Okay, and then we'll be able to like work on it. All right. So Sforno says two who sit and there are no words of Torah between them. This is an assembly of leitim who sit, even though their conversation contains no words of scoffing. Since their words contain no words of Torah, they are considered an assembly of leitim, the entire content of which is nothingness and a temporal matter. Okay, so in other words, here he's acknowledging that they're not actually scoffing, which is what you usually associate mockers, scoffers with. But he's saying since there's no Torah, then they're moshav leitim because everything they're talking about is just nothingness and temporal. Rabbi Hanania brought a proof from that which is written, and in an assembly of leitim he does not sit, but only the Torah of Hashem is his desire. In other words, any assembly is an assembly of leitim except one where there are words of Hashem's Torah. Okay, so we said last time that the Sforno is learning it, that yesh b'neihem divrei Torah means that if there are any words of Torah between them whatsoever, then that removes it from a moshav leitim and puts it into a place where the Shechinah is between them, is dwelling between them. Okay. So now let's read the Sforno on our mishnah, and what he's trying to do again. You got to admire the Sforno here. He's going to try to take the two mishnayos and the Gemara and work out a system. And we are going to try to figure out what the system is. Okay. And I already prepared a little chart. Okay. To help us to keep it all in our mind. Okay. So here's what he says now. He says, and occupy themselves with Torah. Above, okay, that's the mishnah that we did 5 weeks ago. The statement was about men who are discussing their personal affairs. Okay. I'll read this in Hebrew. But anashim misaprim bi'iskehem, they're talking about their own personal affairs. V'yesh b'soch divrei divrei Torah, and their words contain words of Torah. V'amar sheshchina b'neihem, and it said, oh yeah, he does have a different thing. He says the Shechinah is between them. Aval bazeh, but here Diber al ha'osek ba v'amar sheshchina shruya b'nehem. Okay, this is what I was a little afraid of. Okay, if you look at the two versions of the Mishnah that we have, it does use the word Shechinah shruya b'nehem for 7, and it also uses the word Shechinah shruya b'nehem for 3. Okay, Shechinah shruya b'nehem. Okay, but his version apparently said Shechinah b'nehem. Okay, it didn't have the word shruya, and this is like that Mark Twain quote. That be careful when reading health books, you might die of a misprint, which is that if you make, unfortunately, not all texts are reliable, and that's why I try to really care about reliable texts. But sometimes you get a Rishon who says a really good idea, and it's based on a text that was faulty. So whatever, we'll go with the idea. We'll still get the idea here. Okay, so what does he say? So he says, so he wants to say that there are two differences between the Mishnayos. One is that Mishnah Gimel says Beinehem Divrei Torah, which implies Yesh Beinehem Divrei Torah, which implies that they're talking about other stuff, and then Torah comes up. And then the other difference is it says Shechinah Beinehem, the Shechinah is between them, whereas ours says Shechinah Shruya Beinehem, the Shechinah dwells or rests among them. Okay, so he says like this. He says, okay, we read that right. Yeah, okay. It already said in the Gemara, so the Gemara says in the case of 2, their words are written in a book of remembrance, but in the case of 1, the words of 1 are not written in a book of remembrances. Okay, so he's just quoting the Gemara. Then he says, "Ushlosha afilu oskim bedin havulhu oskim b'Torah dedina nami havi Torah." So he quotes the Gemara for 3. He says 3, even though they are involved in judgment, they are involved in Torah since judgment is also Torah. Okay, then he quotes the 10. Uva asara kadma shechina v'asya plus adi asfi. With 10, the Shechinah precedes them, but in the case of 3, the Shechinah doesn't arrive until they convene in judgment. Okay, now he gets to 5. Amnam minyan hachamisha shalom yizkar b'Gemara. So the number of 5, which is not mentioned in the Gemara, nire, it seems, shehishvuhu leminyan asara. It seems that it is equated to 10. Bisman shehayu kibutzam lechatchila lasuk b'Torah. When their gathering is initially for the purposes of being involved in Torah, v'lechein karam agudaso. That's why they're called God's group. Okay, so in other words, like this. 10 people who happen to just be coming together in the one place, and then they decide to be involved in Torah, so the Shechinah was already with them. Okay, but 5 people who get together specifically to learn Torah, the Shechinah was already with them before. Okay, so in other words, 5 who convene l'chatchila for Torah is equal to 10 who happen to be together and just start learning Torah. Okay, so he's trying to say how 5 is somehow implied in 10. Okay, and he's bringing a proof because he says it's aguda, so it's God's gathering, which means that they were gathered for divine purposes. The al ha'echad hevi raya lamala al skaro shagadol skaro biosa osik b'Torah miskar osan sheish b'nehem divrei Torah. Earlier, it brought a proof that the one who is involved in Torah alone has a greater reward than those who merely have words of Torah between them. Oh, I got to change my chart. Okay. And here it's bringing a proof that the Shechinah is dwelling with him. Because he's involved in it. Because it says, I will come and bless you. Okay, so let's put it all together. And feel free to correct me if my chart is wrong. Okay, so here's what the chart looks like. Hold on. And then we'll be able to think about it with everything on one screen. Okay. So here's how the chart works. All right, so here's the case. 10 who delve into Torah, that's from our Mishnah, or 10 who get together to daven. So what's the case? The Shechinah dwells with them and preemptively arrives, okay, even if they didn't gather with the intent to delve into Torah. Okay, so that's the deal there. Okay, next, 5 will delve into Torah. The Shechinah dwells with them. And if they gathered with the intent to delve into Torah, then the Shechinah preemptively arrives. Okay, but if they didn't gather with the intent to delve into Torah, presumably the Shechinah is there, but the Shechinah will only get there once they start learning. Okay, 3 who delve into Torah, and even 3 who sit in judgment. I got to add the word even there. The Shechinah dwells with them, and if they convene in judgment, the Shechinah only arrives once they convene their base in. Okay. Actually, I think that's true even in general. Hold on a second. Yeah, I think that's got to be true even in general, because otherwise it would be included in 5. Okay, but the Shechinah only arrives once they convene their base, and once they convene. Okay, simpler. 2 who delve into Torah, the Shechinah dwells with them, and their words are written in the book of remembrance. Okay. 2 who talk about other things but mention some Torah, the Shechinah is between them. Okay, I think I have to reverse these 2. I think that was the mistake I made. Hold on. Because Sforno is really making a big deal about the Shechinah being with you and the Shechinah being between you. So it's really 1 who delves into Torah, the Shechinah is with him, but his words are not written in the book of remembrances. Actually, it's a little difficult. I don't know about this. 2 who talk about other things but mention some Torah, Shechinah is between them but doesn't dwell with them, and their words are written in the book of remembrances. Okay, hold on a second. And he gets a lot of reward. Okay, so now we just got to figure out what this all means. Okay, so first of all, are there any questions on the facts? Because I think what we should do is we should review the idea from last time, because that was a good approach, and then we'll all be on the same page. But any questions on the facts here or on the chart? Anyone think I made a mistake on the chart?
So the parentheses of "but doesn't dwell with them" refers to is not having that word there, or is that?
Yeah, that's going with the
Okay.
Sforno. Yeah. I'm gonna actually clarify this result according to Sforno's commentary and version and text. Yeah,
When
Tamar.
we learned the text last time, didn't one of the versions have shiur, one of them didn't?
Oh, maybe you're right. We did.
I think the one that we had didn't have shiur.
Oh, interesting. You mean the good version? Let's see.
Yeah.
Okay, so the good version. Ah, yes, you're right. You're right. Okay, now let's see. Let's hold our breath and see what it has in the good version of our Mishnah tonight. No, it doesn't have it either. It doesn't have Shreya. Oh man. Okay, you can't have all the words that you want. That's for your idea. Yeah, there's one time I was at your Zadie's house, at Gersh's house, and he said we were doing a Gemara, and I think he said that I think he thought that there was a proof in the Gemara, and then we looked it up, and it wasn't, and the Gemara went against his idea, and he said, oh, you can just use my method of learning. I said, what's your method? He said, the rip it out method. If you find a page that goes against your ideas, you just rip it out. So yeah, so oh well. Okay, Tamar.
I had a not a very well developed question on the Shechinah preemptively arriving.
Yeah.
Which is like, it kind of is funny, like if you get together for some reason that's not Torah, and then you're going to happen to get involved in Torah later, then the Shechinah comes before you gather. Is that the timeline?
Yeah, is that weird? It's very strange. Yeah,
it seems weird to me. Yeah,
it's not weird.
That's my question.
Yeah, and it's possible that I'm misunderstanding that, but I don't. This Sforno does seem to be saying that, because he's saying, he does say, let's just read it again, make sure we're not misreading it. In fact, you know what I'm going to do? Just to double check, I haven't looked at this yet. I have an English Sforno. I'm just going to make sure I'm translating it correctly. By the way, if anyone wants to learn Pirkei Avos on their own, so if you have the micros, let me just do a brief commercial break here. Hold on. So if you're going to learn Pirkei Avos on your own, there's nothing ever better than Toras Chaim. Okay, Toras Chaim makes the best of everything, and this is what I use, the Toras Chaim Mishnah Reuven. However, if you can't access Hebrew on your own, and you want one commentator in English, I think Sforno is probably the best, because he has consistently good ideas. I don't know if you want to know how much notice how much I quote Sforno in this. And then this Sforno has the Hebrew and the English and footnotes in it. So it's a really good edition, and it's by a trustworthy translator. It's by Rabbi Palkovitz. So let me just read how he translates our Mishnah. Just the last part. He says, the number 5 mentioned here in the Mishnah is not cited in the Talmud. However, it may be that Rabbi Chalafta equated them with 10 if their gathering from the outset was for the purpose of engaging in Torah. That is why they are designated as aguda, a bundle. Yes, that's the way I translated it. So it does sound like he's saying 5, if they gather with the intent to engage in Torah, then the Shekhinah is with them from the beginning. But the 5 who gather for that purpose is equal to the 10 who gather not for that purpose. So it does sound like the Shekhinah is with them even without it. Yeah, it is weird tomorrow. Yeah, Alex?
This might be a dumb question, but what would necessarily be the pros of the Shekhinah preemptively being with them?
That's also a good question.
Not?
That is a good question. Yeah. So who cares if the Shekhinah is preemptively with you? Okay. Yeah. I'm going to add that here just so we can make sure we come back to it. Okay. According to Sforno. Okay. Oh, so really according to the Gemara, right? To the Gemara. All right. Or sorry, I'll just say question on the Gemara. Question on the Gemara. Okay. Who cares if the Shekhinah gets there first? Yeah. Yeah, Lauren?
I'm very confused about this book of remembrances that the Gemara is talking about. Should we know what that's referring to? Or
okay. I don't. It's a good question, right?
That's why I was very confused by the Gemara, I guess, because that book of remembrances kind of threw me off. And
right. So this is the difficult thing. Despite my whole spiel about how the psukim don't matter, the Gemara is saying that this thing about the book of remembrances does matter. Okay, so let's add that question here. Okay, question on the Gemara, which we didn't answer last time. Okay, what's the deal with this book of remembrances? Yeah. Oof, tall order tonight. It's gonna be a mean feat if we get any ideas. Okay, so let's do this. Let's at least get the idea that we got the last time by reviewing what we did last time. Okay, and I think that'll give us a foundation for approaching this. And usually I would ask if anyone remembers what we did last time, but I think for the sake of efficiency, I'm just going to review. So I'm not going to go through the whole PowerPoint, but just to review the 3 definitions of Shechinah in case we decide to switch definitions this time. The 3 understandings of Shechinah that I have are the Rambam's, Rav David Tzvi Hoffman's, and then my working definition. Okay, the Rambam says the verb. This is my summary. The verb shachin refers to the continuity of God's hashgacha in a particular place. Okay, so he says shachin means to be in one place, with a certain degree of permanence, and it's talking about God's hashgacha. Okay, Rav David Tzvi Hoffman says that that the term mishkan, meaning like the place of God's dwelling, or the phenomenon of God's dwelling, refers to the manifest divine providence which determines Israel's fate. And by manifest, he means that it's visible. Okay, meaning that when you see that God, what do you call it? Is leading the destiny of the Jewish people, you call that Shechinah. So example, Vayhi ben Tzoma ha'aron vayomer Moshe kuma ad Hashem v'yafutu oivecha v'yanusu misanacha mipanacha. So when the ark would travel, Moshe would say, Kuma Hashem, arise Hashem, ve'yafutu oivecha, and let your enemies be scattered. V'yanusu misanacha mipanacha, and let your those who are your who you hate flee from before you. So in other words, when Klal Yisrael would go to war and they had the hashgacha with them, then they would, have these like miraculous victories, so it's like manifest, or let's say like the pillar of cloud and fire leading them through the midbar, that was manifest Shechinah destiny. Okay. And then my working definition of Shechinah is that which manifests Hashem's existence via his actions. Okay. Meaning anything that makes you say, wow, it's real to me that Hashem exists, then that could be called Shechinah. Okay, and we saw that a little bit from the meiri last time, which is he says on our mishnah, Shemitoch divrei torasam masigim mikavod boraam, that through their words of Torah they apprehend the glory of their creators. Anything that makes you say, wow, God is glorious, that could be called Shechinah. Okay, so what was our idea last time? So our idea last time was that, let's just go back to the Mishnah because that's what we were explaining last time, that human beings are social creatures and we tend to ascribe more reality to things when they are acknowledged by other people. So you have a conviction in God's existence and you learn Torah and you daven, okay? You do all these things. You can do these things by yourself, okay? And there's a certain level of reality that it has to you, okay? However, when you are with someone else and you engage in words of Torah with them, so the very fact that you're talking about God and about his Torah, or about his actions with another person makes God's existence more real to you. And what we said last time is we said that the Mishnah is showing you that if two of you get together to talk about something that is not Torah related, that's a tremendous opportunity that you can use to like strengthen your conviction in God's existence and the reality of God's existence to your mind, simply by mentioning something that has to do with God. And I don't think I gave this example last time. I can't remember if I did, but remember when we were doing the Mishnah about eating at the table and there's no words of Torah? Do you remember what the minimal requirement would be to fulfill words of Torah at a meal? I forgot who mentioned it. I think Rashi says people used to just discharge their obligation by doing this one thing. Benching. Okay, right. So tell me if you've ever had. I don't know what you guys do when you're with Jewish friends and you're going to eat something. I tend to make the bracha in the same volume that I do like when I'm by myself. So I'll just like make a bracha and then eat, But there are people who will like make the bracha out loud to give the other person a chance to say amen, right? Now that's probably halachically the right thing to do, because it is a it is a halacha to say amen when you hear a bracha. But do you ever? I don't know if you get that feeling. There's a certain feeling of awkwardness when a person makes a bracha out loud in the middle of a conversation. Not in I'm not saying brachos in general. Like when someone makes a motzi at the Shabbos table, I'm not like, oh, that's weird. Like you're in the middle of a conversation and then someone says like, so I think the weirdness comes from the fact that like you're engaged in a social reality, and that has a certain feeling that like we are the masters of our social reality, and like it's just us talking about our stuff, and then like intruding upon that is like the reality of like God's existence, and you're kind of forced to acknowledge it with, and that contrast like makes for this weird thing. Oh yeah, like God exists, and so I think that's like the vibe that we're going for here, which is that not that you should make it awkward, but that when you're talking with friends about some nonsense stuff, and like you mentioned an idea that you heard in a shiur, it breaks that normal mundane social experience, and then brings the reality of God into the level of the reality of whatever discourse you were doing, so it's a tremendous opportunity for that. Yeah, Alex, I saw you had your hand up, but then you put it down. I don't know if that was.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking about when you said there's like a level of awkwardness to that. I feel like that comes more from like the social script of like you don't interrupt, like you don't eat while you're in the middle of talking. It's kind of just the same idea. I don't necessarily know that.
Okay, that's definitely
it
possible.
Being about God making it awkward.
Okay, definitely possible, but I think that if someone is in the middle of a conversation and then they get a phone call and they say a sentence, that might be rude, but it's not the same feeling as someone making a bracha, Right. And similarly also like there are people who are just really bad at bringing up Torah in a natural way, and like there's a certain level of awkwardness to that, but whatever. I don't want to make it the whole thing about the awkwardness. Okay, so we don't have to stick to that idea, but that's the idea we said last time. Okay, and we said that the Shechinah is between them. Last time we didn't know that there was a difference between Shechinah beinehem and Shechinah shruya beinehem. And we assumed that 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and all the way up would all be the same. Okay, now we have to have more nuance in our idea. And the question is, can we explain all these particulars here? Okay, that's the challenge for tonight. So floor is open now. Now we can think. And where do we begin? Wherever you think is easiest to begin. Yeah, Lauren.
So I guess I want to suggest an idea, maybe following up on our last mishnah about like how Shechinah means like recognizing God's existence. So like with 10, I'm assuming that 10 means like a shiur. So you're going somewhere and you're going maybe to daven, like a shul, or you're going to a shiur. So there, God's existence is manifest by the fact that like, oh, this shiur is being publicized. We're all going there. And that's why it's like before people go, because also a shul itself is a place of davening. So that's where you have a minyan. And so that, contributes to recognizing God. 5, who delve into Torah, that has to be with gathering with the intent. So that's like with, again, like if there's a scheduled chabura, I guess, then that would be like a shiur. And then 3 is like a basin. So they're convening together. that's kind of, again, that's also like manifesting Hashem's existence, but in the context of the court. Not necessarily like a Torah class, but that's in the context of judgment. And then 2 is our mishnah. So I guess it's really just adding chiddush to the first 3 numbers, but not.
Okay. So let me just tackle each of those points on its own. Okay. And let's just start with the 10. So definitely when there's a whole massive shiur going on, then there is a greater reality of God's existence. But the way you're explaining it, are you saying that the difference is only like the difference between 10 and 2 is just quantitative, or is there a qualitative difference between 10 and fewer than 10?
Well, maybe the qualitative, I feel like maybe it's about like recognizing it even beforehand. I guess like I'm thinking about how he says like before they arrive. So I guess it's kind of like maybe the place itself, whereas like with 2, it'll only come about if you're actually talking about Torah and you're, grabbing an opportunity. But 10, it's kind of like just the fact that someone else, maybe it's even someone else hearing about it, or I don't know, maybe you don't even have to be there. I'm not being so clear.
Oh, yeah, okay. So I hear the approaches. Yeah, Tamar?
Maybe to add on to that, I don't know why you have to say exactly at 10, or maybe you just have to cut it off somewhere, but I feel like at some number of people, you start having like an event, like there's hanging out with your friends. Yeah. There's like hanging out with your friends, and then there's like a thing is happening. Yeah. And maybe 10 people is a thing is happening. Like,
okay. I think you're onto something. I'll give you guys a hint, which is, this is the idea of minyan. Okay. So like the idea of minyan, which again, we derive from Ada. What is the idea of minyan? Like there's certain things we can only do in a minyan, right? That davar should be kedusha, certain, kaddish, kedusha, kriyas Torah. So what's the idea of what's the difference between minyan and fewer than a minyan? Like just conceptually.
There's certain tefillos that you only say in a minyan, but also I don't know. I don't know the source of this idea, but I've heard that like tefillos are heard better when you're in a minyan. I don't know.
Yeah, so all those ideas are dependent on what I'm asking for. I'm asking for what's the underlying cause of that. Yeah. And by the way, this might also be, I don't know, I have not been into this sugya in a while. I have like a certain idea, but this might, I'm sure at some point in your education, you've asked like, why don't women count for a minyan? So I think this might touch upon that also. Yeah, Tamar?
Okay, I was hesitant to say this because I feel like I just heard this somewhere and I don't know what the idea is.
Okay.
But there's like some idea of it being like a little version of society or something like that.
That's it. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know where you heard it either, but so the idea, first of all, the proof that we just saw, the source of minyan is with Ada, right? Hold on a second. Where are we? Bartanura? Where are you? Bartanura. There we go. The pasuk. I just want to see. Wait, no, we're too far. Bamidbar. I just want to see something here. If the Torah Tamima says this, Ada. Yeah. Okay. So for those who don't know, the Torah Tamima brings down all the chazals that have to do with halacha. Yeah. Mikan she'ein Ada pchusa me'asara Yisraelim. Okay. And let's see if he explains the idea behind minyan. I'm just going to read it because it's short. Kamo hamaraglim levad Yehoshua v'kalev. So an Ada is the number of the maraglim, but without Yehoshua and Kalev. Nafkamina b'zeh l'chol davar shebikdusha kagon kaddish ubarchu v'od. Of kama devarim ein omrim b'pachas mesara. So kaddish, baruchu, and other things we don't say with fewer than 10. V'chein le'inyan kiddush hashem b'farhesia. Oh, that's another manifestation. Oh, that's actually maybe even better. That when you're talking about kiddush Hashem and chilul Hashem in public or not in public, it goes by 10 Jews, okay, or 10 men who count for minyan. All right. Again, people think that this is a side thing that I think people have this latent assumption that kiddush Hashem and chilul Hashem are primarily for non-Jews. But if you look at the actual halachos, even though there are categories of chilul Hashem for non-Jews, whether or not it's considered public or private, and all the halachos of kiddush Hashem and chilul Hashem have to do with how many Jews are present. So if you have 1,000 non-Jews and 9 Jews, it's considered to be private. Okay, but if you have 10 Jews and 1 non-Jew, it's considered to be public. All right, for the halachos of Kiddush Hashem and Chilul Hashem. Diafinan mi perek. Mi pasuk to Parshas Emor v'nikdashi pasoch b'nei Yisrael uksib maseh korach hibadlu mitoch ha'ida hazos. Oh, so it's interesting. Yeah, you also learn it out from another Gzera Shava of the word toch. It says, "I will be sanctified b'toch b'nei Yisrael, in the midst of b'nei Yisrael," and then it's also written by Korach. Hibadlu mitoch ha'ida hazos, separate from mitoch, from the midst of this assembly. Yafina mikodem. Ada de Korach me Ada de Meraglim, Ma Kan Asara Yisraelim Af Hasam Asara Yisraelim, and you learn out from Ada 10. So in other words, you learn Ada from the Meraglim is 10, and then you learn Kiddush Hashem in public from the word Toch, from the fact that the word Toch is used for Ada with Ada for both of them. Or sorry, with the word Toch is used by both Kiddush Hashem and by Korach. Toch and Ada are used by Korach, and then Ada is 10. Okay. V'shuv yafinan toch de v'nikdashi b'sot b'nei Yisrael mitoch di bala mitoch Ada de farhesia hi asara b'nei Adam Yisraelim ubiarnu kol inyan hazeh v'parshas emor pasuk in Israel. Okay, we're not going to look it up. So the idea is, like Tamar said, 10 is considered to be public, and it's considered to be like a microcosm of society. Like, obviously, you can't have an idea of public things requiring all Jews to be present. Okay, so how many Jews are you going to choose? You're going to choose some number that represents an assembly of Jews, okay, a community of Jews, and that's 10. And my understanding why it has to be 10 men is because you need the hischayvus in mitzvos, in like the mitzvah system, and since women are pater from mitzvos sesesha as man grama, so then that's why they don't represent the entire community, and that's also why male avadim, why servants also don't count. Not because women servants are equal in terms of some other way, but because servants are also put from mitzvos sesesha as man grama, and so that's why, like, you need the 10, basically you need 10 representatives of the mitzvah system, which is going to be 10 adult men who are free. Okay, so that's the answer to the question, that it's not just, so what everything Lauren said is true, that there's a quantitative increase when you are gathered with like a bunch of people in a shiur, but the key is, I think, that it's a representative of of Klal Yisrael, of Am Yisrael, is brought into being when there are 10. Okay, so now I think that with that you can give a better answer for why the Shechinah arrives ahead of time, maybe. Anyone want to say? And it's similar to what Lauren said. I think just this idea allows us to say it clearer. So I think the idea, and it's I guess because I'm male and I've had this experience more than you have probably, but like there is this feeling when you're sitting waiting for a minyan, so that people can come and like say Baruch and like Kaddish and stuff like that. There is this feeling of like there's a latent potentiality for a minyan there, and that has a certain feeling of reality to it. If it just happens to be a bunch of individuals, like you go to like a bunch of non-Jews, okay, and they're sitting around, and you if you say to them, oh, you guys are waiting for 10, they'd be like, what? Like there's no like slot of like 10 that they're waiting to fill, but with us there is. And since that idea has to do with like a microcosm of Klal Yisrael, or a representative of the tzibur, and that's associated with Shechinah, so then it is like the Shechinah is already there, it's just waiting to be actualized, So I think that's like the idea of the Shechinah is like preemptively there, that it's brought to mind, whereas a random gathering of like a smaller number is not going to have that latent potential, because there's no number that you're trying to fulfill that like represents Klal Yisrael. Yeah, Ayala?
In what sense are you saying here that the Shechinah is like connected with that?
Oh, so in other words, like this, I'm connecting to the Shechinah idea that we said before. So Shechinah means that it's a heightened level of kavod shamayim, of kavod Hashem, of recognition of God's glory. And when let's just take the simple example. When you are gathering for a minyan, when people are waiting for like the mincha minyan to form, so there is a recognition that we're here to glorify God, even though we don't have that. And that's just we're here to glorify God. Klal Yisrael glorifies God. That's the idea of a minyan. And even if the minyan hasn't gotten there yet, that idea is already registering on our minds, because that's the reason why that's what's the minyan is coming into being here, you know? And I think that's present. It's funny, that is present even when you're not gathering to daven or you're not gathering to learn. And you'll see this. I don't know how often like you hear this or see this, like when there is a random group of like 10 men, someone is inevitably going to go, oh, we got a minyan, you know, like it's so like baked into like our mindset that like that idea of minyan is automatically brings to mind like a Shechinah, you know. Yeah, Tamar.
I forgot what the case is. Is Sforno only talking about when people get together to daven and then they end up learning, or is it like they gather for a meal or something and then they learn?
He doesn't mention the davening in conjunction with learning. He seems to imply that if 10 people happen to be together and then they start learning, then the Shechinah is with them. And then certainly if they gather to daven. It's a little unclear because he doesn't address that case specifically. What was that?
Yeah. When does the Shechinah arrive in that?
When you mean when they're not
situation?
planning anything?
Like, let's say, yeah, okay, like let's say you have 10 people together.
Yeah.
For some other project
it sounds like he's saying that the preemptive Shechinah arrives even when the 10 people are gathered for some other reason before the 10 people get there. But with 5, the preemptive Shechinah only arrives when they're planning to meet to learn, in which case, like, you know, the Shechinah is there even when like the first person gets there. It's a little difficult. It's not so smooth, but I think those are the facts. Yeah, Lauren?
Sorry, it takes me a while to unmute. So is the idea of 10, is it like from the Miraglim, like 10 makes a microcosm of society?
Yeah.
And I guess basically, like, is it, so in that case, let's say you have like Klal Yisrael, like let's say you have like 10 Jews together. I guess it's a little bit like Tamar. So 10 Jews together, where they're supposed to be involved in Torah, something Torah related, then that's like expression of God. But if you
that's
just
actually a good idea.
If you have a Jewish bagel store or something,
yeah,
and there's lots of Jews in there, that's not a manifestation of the Shechinah. I don't know.
I think I'm pretty sure the Sforno is reading it that anytime there are 10 people there, actually no, it's tough. Maybe Tamar was right that it is when they are gathered to learn, because our mishnah only says when they're gathered to learn. Yeah, see, going over the facts again really quickly. The Gemara said the difference between 10 and 3 is Asara Kadma Shechinah V'Asya. The Shechinah arrives before they get there. Tlasa Ad Diasfi. 3, the Shechinah only arrives when they sit there. Okay, that's the Gemara. Sforno says, however, regarding how do we know 5, which is not mentioned in the Gemara, it seems that this is equal to 10 when the 5 convene for the sake of occupying themselves with Torah. So it sounds like he's saying, I'm reading that as the 5, and he used the word l'chatchila, when the 5 convene for the express sake, expressly for the sake, convene expressly for the sake of occupying themselves with Torah. So it does. That's how I'm reading it. It does sound like he's saying when 5 people say, okay, you want to get together to learn, good, and then person 1 gets there, the Shechinah is already there. And that's equal to 10, even when they don't get there for the express purpose of learning Torah, it sounds like. Because if you said that the 10 need to be there for the express purpose of learning Torah, so then now 10 and 5 are absolutely equal. Then you don't need to say 10 at all. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a bit confused about this, because isn't the preface to every single one of these cases that they're involved with Torah? And like, why does he feel the need to equate 5 with 10?
Yeah. So the first point you mentioned is confusing me as well. because the Mishnah definitely says that this is all for the purposes of learning Torah. What do you call it? And then the thing that makes him want to say 5 is he's trying to get 5 out of the Gemara without positing any new ideas about 5. So he's either going to have to derive 5 from an extension of 10 or an extension of 3. And he's getting from an extension of 10. Okay. And that's what creates the problems, because the Gemara, neither the Gemara nor the Mishnayos talk about about what, no, actually, it's interesting. See, he might be getting this idea of like why you're planning to be there from his distinction between the two Mishnayos and Avos, right? Because that was the case. He says, if you're sitting there talking about your own personal business and then Torah comes up, that's different than if you get together to learn Torah. So maybe he's trying to like borrow the distinction from the two Mishnayos and Avos and then posit that to explain the 5 case. I'm not sure. I'm also confused. Okay, where are we holding right now? Let's go back to the chart. Okay, so let's just state what we have so far, which is that 10 is the idea of that this is a representation of Jewish society. This is Jewish public. When you have 10, it's Jewish public. So when you have 10 davening together to glorify God, that definitely makes God more real to you. And when you have 10 learning together, that also makes God more real to you. And I guess the experience I think of, by the way, with this is, if you've ever been to a massive shiur, and for me, the memory is the Shavuot shiurs that Rabbi Chait used to give, that the whole community is there learning. And there is this feeling of like, we're sitting here involving ourselves in the eternal Torah that is like God's will, and there is a cool feeling of the reality of God there that you would not get. No, actually, I should say this. It is weird. You get this. The only other place I've gotten this, and this is going to be strange, 2 other places is, and this is going to sound bad because it is bad, is at anime conventions and at Magic the Gathering tournaments. Okay, we're like, and I'm sure if I liked sports and if I ever went to a sports game, then there'd be a feeling at like a game also. Or if I went to like a concert of like a musical artist, that there is this feeling that when a bunch of people who share the same like values and interests come together, it makes the thing somehow more real, And like for there, it's bad because the thing is not really like real in any significant sense. But in this case, it is. But I think it's a good example because I'm not saying a mystical idea about Shechinah. I'm saying that like psychologically, we respond to things as we treat things as more real when lots of people acknowledge it simultaneously. And that's what's going on with this. And you want that about actual real concepts like the Shechinah, but you don't want that about like nonsense, Okay. So that's 10. 5, we're saying.
I've been thinking about, I don't know if anyone else has been here, but I remember like when I was in Israel for the year, like 13 years ago, it was also a Hakel year, and I went to Hakel at the Kotel, and it was like insanely crowded and took us like 2 hours to get out, but it also was pretty incredible, like all these Jews there and hearing Birkat Kohanim and a really incredible experience. Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned that because so obviously they call that Hakel even though it's not the real Hakel, but it's like remembrance of Hakel. But if you actually read the halachos of Hakel, I think this is going to actually capture what I'm saying. So Hakel is in a weird spot. It's in Sefer Avoda. Sorry, it's in Sefer Korbanos in the Chagiga because they would do it at the end of Sukkot. So again, Hakel is every 7 years. The Klal Yisrael would gather, and then the king would read the Torah publicly. So the Rambam says, I'm just going to read the end here. V'gerim she'enam makirim, so converts who don't understand Hebrew, chayavim l'hachin libam u'l'hachshiv oznam lishmoa be'ema v'yira v'gila bira'ada kiyom shnitna bo b'sinai. So let's say you're there and you don't even understand what's being said. You're obligated to prepare your mind or your heart and to listen attentively in awe and fear and joy and trembling, like the day that the Torah was given at Sinai. And this is the and then he says, "Afilu chachamim gedolim sheyodim kol Torah kula." Even great chachamim who know the entire Torah, chayavim lishmo b'kavana gedola yisera. they're obligated to listen with a great intention and focus. Someone who is not able to hear, he should direct his heart to this kriya. The pasuk only established this reading to strengthen the true religion. You should see yourself as though you are being commanded by this now, as if you're hearing it from God's mouth. The king is an agent to convey the words of God. So it is like this grand thing that's supposed to like replicate Sinai. So that's a good example of this. Okay, so can we figure out everything else? I'll tell you one step, okay? And this might be too simple. What do you think the difference is between the Shechinah dwelling with you versus the Shechinah being between you? And remember, the case is Shechinah dwells with you when you have a chavrusa that you sit down to learn Torah, and the Shechinah is between you if you're talking about other stuff and then you bring up God, and then or you bring up something about God and then you go back to your talk. Yeah, Tamar?
The Shechinah dwelling with you sounds like more permanent, like maybe it continues after the conversation.
That's what I think it is also, right? That it lasts with you more because you sat down in order to be involved in these ideas. And so you're making yourself more receptive to the ideas impacting you. Whereas if it just comes up, like, it's the difference between if you have prepared for a shiur with a chavrusa and then you hear the shiur, or let's say you have a question and then the shiur answers it, it's going to stick with you much more than if you didn't prepare or if you didn't have the question and then like the person giving shiur just tells you an idea, Yeah, Alex?
I think there's more of like a permanence with the idea of dwelling, because like if something's between you, then it's very passing, like you're saying, it is more of a fleeting thing on your mind, but the idea of dwelling is like you think of a house, you think of something more permanent and like structured in its way.
Yeah, I think it fits into the words. Yeah. Okay, that's good. All right, now what about the book of remembrance? Now, again, I'm not 100% convinced that I got this order right. It might be that these two are above the one. I'm not sure. But either way, what's the idea that if you're with two people, your words are written in the book of remembrance, whereas if it's one, your words don't get written in the book of remembrance?
I mean, I feel like someone remembers things better if they're forced to verbalize it.
Yeah.
Which you might do with someone else rather than with yourself.
I think that's it. And I think that's very simple, but I think that's the idea. Okay. Which is that if you're learning it with someone else, then it's going to stick with you more than if you're learning it by yourself. Okay. Because you're verbalizing it. And it's not just the verbalization. Although let me bring a raya that the verbalization helps. Okay. This is actually a halacha in Hilchos Talmud Torah, in the parak about how to get the crown of Torah. The Rambam says that kol hamashmiya kolo b'shas talmudo miskayim biado. Anyone who makes audible the word his learning, then his learning will stick with him. But if you read silently, then then you're going to forget quickly. So that's why there's this universal minhag in Klal Yisrael that when you're learning, you learn out loud. And then Beis Midrash is really noisy. So that's even with one person. So I think with one person you're going to have better odds of remembering it if you say it out loud. But it's I think if you're communicating it to another mind, somehow it has a different thing. And I don't know if you've had this experience giving over ideas or teaching, but I've definitely had this experience. There are times when I will have prepared a shiur alone, and then as soon as I start giving the shiur, new ideas start forming because I'm addressing myself to another mind. Some weird thing that happens. And not only that, but if it's a conversation, you tend to remember it more than something that you just had as a fleeting thought, or even something that you had while you were learning. And like, it's interesting that if the order of my chart is correct, your words get written in the book. If you're two people, regardless of whether you're on the higher level of delving into Torah or on the lower level of like talking about other stuff. So what's interesting is like the one person is on the higher level in that the Shechinah is, dwells with him, right? We should say dwells with him. Hold on. Dwells with him. But he's on a lower level in terms of not getting written in the book of remembrances. But the two who are talking about other stuff, they don't have the Shechinah dwelling with him, but their words are written. And I think maybe what you could say about that is like, the impact of the reality of God's existence is going to be very fleeting. If it just comes up in conversation, it's still good. You are using that opportunity to strengthen your awareness of God's existence, but it's more fleeting. But the thing is like, let's say you were talking with your, like, I don't know, this happens to me all the time, is like, I'll be talking with someone about something else, and then they'll mention an idea that they heard, and I'll remember it because I was conversing with somebody about it, and that wouldn't happen if it was just me like thinking on my own. Okay. So I think that explains these two. So what we have not explained yet is the 3. Okay. So the Havamina here is that, okay. So first of all, one question is, why isn't the Shechinah there before they convene? In other words, what we said here, like, why don't you have the same phenomenon of waiting for a minyan? There's a reality of Shechinah. Why not waiting for the third dayan to come, for the beis din? Why isn't there a reality of Shechinah? And then the second question is like, what's the Havamina that if 3 judges are sitting down there to paskin, then since their psak is just creating shalom, you might think that the Shechinah is not with them. But then Kamash Malan, judgment is also learning Torah. So the Shechinah is with them. Like, that's a weird Havamina maskana. So anyone have answers to those two, either of those two questions?
I mean, you might think that, sorry, this one raised her hand.
Oh yeah, sorry, yeah, Tamar.
This is maybe just like a partial step. Then maybe like in terms of like making people think about Hashem. Yeah. Then maybe the judgment has a different focus, like people don't relate to it the same way.
That's a good partial step. Yeah, in other words, yeah, that's interesting. So with tefillah or Torah, so it's interesting. Tefillah and Torah are both avodah shebelev. That's how the Rambam describes them, which is essentially working on shaping your internal ideas and values. Okay, but that's Torah does it. Talmud Torah does it primarily through the intellect, and tefillah does it primarily through like working on the actual like emotions. Working on through the mind, obviously also. But din is really about like what judgments are going to be pronounced on you. It's not really an involvement of perfection that you're in. And sorry, we gotta also remember this is not just about judges. This is also about 3 who are involved in Torah. That's a hard one, but I think it's a good half step though. Yeah. You were gonna say something first.
Yeah, I was gonna say that I wasn't thinking in terms of the perspective of like who's getting judged, because I didn't think that's what it was talking about.
I don't think it is either. Yeah, I got it.
I mean, if they're giving judgment, like they've learned the laws that they have to use in order to give the judgment already. It's not like they're necessarily learning anything new. They're just interpreting it, I guess. So maybe that's why you would think that they're not actually involved in Torah. But
right. Yeah, I definitely hear that. Yeah. It's funny though, because like what they actually do though is they are going to have to discuss it. So yeah, it's not, it's an interesting case. The other thing also is like, if I am a posek and I sit down to like paskin a case, everyone's going to say that the Shechinah is with me because like I am learning. It's funny this only comes up here. I don't know. Alex, did you have something?
Well, yes, but my thought kind of has to shift now because it's no longer being conceptualized as just like judges.
Yeah. I also got if we just had the Gemara in Berachos, then actually, it's fine. Even the Gemara in Berachos. The way to read the Gemara in Berachos is it says, if you have 2, why do you need 3? What might you say? That since judgment is to promote peace in the world, the Shechinah doesn't come. Therefore, we are taught that judgment is also Torah. So it really is just, questioning if there are just 3 for judgment. But it seems like the Gemara doesn't, in other words, since the Gemara only focuses on judgment, seems like it's obvious to the Gemara that 3 who are involved in Torah get Shechinah for the same reason that 2 involved in Torah get Shechinah. So that's the hard part. So you're going to have to like work out some weird idea where like when you have 3 who are gathered to learn Torah, that it brings to mind the idea of judgment. I don't know what's going on with this 3 thing. Yeah, this is hard. Okay, here's what I think we're going to do. I'm going to stop now because it's getting close to my bedtime. But let's just go through and review what we answered, and then try to answer like, I know Alex only asked like who cares if the Shechinah gets here first, but I want to ask the who cares about the whole thing, okay? Because we didn't ask our usual question, okay, which is this: what is this doing in Pirkei Avos? Okay, how does this help us become Hasidim? Okay, so what does Shechinah mean in this context, and what does it mean to dwell with people? So Shechinah means apprehending the kavod of the Creator, right? Is the glory of God, God being a reality in your mind, and God dwelling with people has that idea. And I saw something interesting in the Sforno, by the way. I just had a bunch of Sfornos open. Let me just see if this is the one. Yeah, so Sforno points out something interesting here. He says, I'm not going to read this whole thing, but he says, so after the Jews lost their spiritual level at Matan Torah, that they lost the ability for the Shechinah to dwell upon them without any intermediary. As it says, so okay, background. Sforno has this whole idea that after Sinai, the Jews could have the Shechinah be with them directly, but then after Sinai, after the Chet HaEgel, then they needed some sort of medium for the Shechinah to be with them, and that's where the Mishkan came in. That's Sforno's whole way of learning it. He points out, though, he says, maybe this is not it. Okay, I'm just going to tell this to you, and you could like look it up on your own. Maybe it's not this Sforno. Hold on. No, he brings in a bunch of psukim that show. Was this it? No, that whenever it talks about the Shechinah dwelling. See, I think if you ask people like, what is the where does the Shechinah dwell when everything's functioning properly, they would say in the mikdash. But if you look at the psukim about the Shechinah, it always is talking about God dwelling among people. So like v'asu li mikdash v'shachanti b'socham, build for me a mikdash, and it doesn't say I will dwell in it. It says I will dwell in you, or it says v'shachanti b'soch b'nei Israel. Shechinah is a phenomenon that resides in our minds, and it's in our minds via physical objects, via the Beis HaMikdash and via like the seeing miracles and all this other stuff. But like ultimately, Shechinah refers to the recognition of the existence of God, and that's going to be something that is like in people. Okay, what does Oskim B'Torah mean? So what are the parameters? Are they even learning together? So what I would say is, like the Meiri said, it's anything that allows you to be masig kavod habore. So I think if you're learning, I think we said this last time, if you're learning science, but you're a person who is a monotheist who believes that God created the universe, and your learning of science like brings you to recognition of God, that would be osik b'Torah. If you are like involved in talking about doing mitzvos, I think even like that could be osik b'Torah. Anything involving a recognition of God through like his chachma is going to be osik b'Torah. And I don't even know if you have to be learning together. Like you go to a base midrash and you have 10 people learning individually, that still brings to mind the idea that they're all there like for kavod of Shechinah. I don't think it has to be like together. What is the idea of all these numbers of people delving into the Torah and the Shechinah being with them? Okay, so that's the main idea. So the idea seems to be that there is a quantitative and sometimes qualitative increase with the more people you have being devoted to being osik in Torah. So you have a quantitative increase from let's say like 3 to 4, 4 to 5, but you have a qualitative increase when it's you by yourself and then you talking it out with someone else, or if you have no minyan versus a minyan where it brings to mind Klal Yisrael as this part being part of their involvement. And so it's quantitative and qualitative. And I think that's what Rבינו Yona means when he says that the more people, then the more reward. Why do you need all these numbers? Okay, so we didn't fully answer that, other than those are all the Havaminas. What role did the psukim play? Okay, so that we just said is telling you the numbers. What do we get from the near verbatim repetition of the clause about 2 people from Avos 3:3? So here's the thing. For this question and like Yael's question, why don't we juxtapose these? and why don't we mash them into one? I mean, like it sounds like the two ideas go together. It sounds like Sforno holds you can't learn this without learning that one. So I don't really know. They are teaching two different ideas, but I don't know why we don't put them together. Who cares if the Shechinah gets there first? Oh, say what's what the book of remembrances? We said that it makes you remember more. Who cares if the Shechinah gets there first? Yeah, who cares? Do we answer that?
I mean, I think you were saying it was like more of a real thing. Like you said, when you're like waiting for a minion, like it's there even when you're not physically there.
Right, but that explains like what it means, but why should we care about it? Like, what's the benefit of it? I mean, I don't think we have to answer that there's a benefit. I think it is just stating like what the reality is, that you're thinking about the Shechinah even before it's there. But the who cares question has to be here. Question is like, what practical benefit do we get out of this in terms of becoming Hasidim? Like, this is not like, you know, the last couple of mishnahs we did of if you find yourself awake at night, you should devote it to learning Torah, you know, like, okay, I understand how that makes you a Hasid. If you're at a meal and you don't involve yourself in Torah, then that's like, you know, offerings to vomit and filth, you know? So how does this help you to become a Hasid or someone who lives Lifnei Mishur Sadin? I think this is a deep idea. I mean, you don't have to say a deep idea, but yeah, Alex?
Maybe it like helps you find the possibility of finding Torah and Hashem in as many kinds of social situations as you could find yourself in.
Yeah. Okay, good. I think that's definitely the essence. Yeah, I have something to add to that. Yeah, Ayala?
I'm gonna say I think doing that also makes it like an experiential thing as opposed to just like you're learning and then you're like doing other stuff, but like this is making Torah your entire experience.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to combine those two. Okay. Which is that in a local sense, this is saying what Alex said, which is that you should be looking for opportunities to convert all your social interactions and emotions into opportunities for perceiving the Shechinah, you know? And I think that is something that we just are not hardwired to do because we're so attached to placing value in people because of other stupid reasons, you know, like caring what people think of us, or like you know, or like you know, caring about the fact that we care about the same values of the same like anime or like magic or sports, you know. But on a deeper level, I think that this is a good like example of how a person who wants to become a chassid should be constantly looking for ways to cultivate awareness of God in everything, you know, and making God's existence real to you in everything, you know. And we're going to see, I think, spoiler alert, and this is a true spoiler because I didn't even know the idea. The next mishnah is the one about if you are walking on the way. Is it? No, it's not. No, it's too much knowledge for now. Whatever. You're walking on the way and learning and you see a beautiful tree, you know, and it talks about like how to frame that in terms of your proper relationship to like God and not being thrown off, or, you know, we said in the last one about, you know, your involvement in a livelihood versus your involvement in Torah. Like, you know, it's all, there's a different dimension of becoming a chassid. So chassid means going beyond the letter of the law. And that's the definition in halacha. But I think there is also something that a chassid does of becoming conscious of God as a reality that you need to be actively on the lookout for opportunities for. So our mission is doing it in the social realm, but I think that extends to other stuff. Like you have that, I think I read one in our first thing in the series, you know, there's the Gemara that says, Haiman debaylim have chasida, l'kai mili de Avos. If you want to become a chassid, you should fulfill the teachings of Avos. But then there's another one of Haiman debaylim have chasida, l'kai mili de Berachos. You should fulfill all the teachings in Masechtas Berachos, because Berachos are an institution that are designed to bring to mind God everywhere, you know, like in every single aspect of your existence. And that's also part of being a chassid, you know. And then the other one is Nezikin, which has to do with how you interact with other people. So, yeah. So I think that's the idea here. So did we get new ideas, or is this just like a deepening of the ideas from before? I don't know. You can judge yourself on that, but I think we at the very least got a good review. And I feel like you know, next time I see a minion, hopefully like, you know, like when we're waiting for people to come for a minion, I'll think about this idea. But I think the main takeaway is just like the same takeaway we had before, which is use your social opportunities to strengthen the reality of God in your mind. And you have to take that in an active way. Otherwise it's you know, Shechinah is only as good as you recognize it. Like, if you don't think about this idea, it's not gonna have the effect. So that's that. Okay. Really early announcement. As far as I know, the next 4 Thursdays we're on, okay, which takes us through the first Thursday of January. I think the first Thursday in January is the only Thursday in January that I'm going to give this year, because the 12th I'm scheduled to fly back to Seattle, and then I'm on break for the 19th and 26th. So I'll remind you of that. I just wanted to say it now in case you're planning stuff. Okay.
Is there any interruption for Hanukkah or?
Not for this year, I don't think. Unless like I find out that, look, let's do this. You tell me if you can't make it, and if like everyone cancels, then like then we'll cancel, or we'll do like a Q&A or something like that. But I don't plan to cancel this for Hanukkah. Maybe the Friday one though. But yeah. Okay. Have a good Shabbos if I don't talk to you tomorrow, and until next time.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.